from Carrie Buys Houses, and welcome back to our 5-part series on the top 5 mistakes to avoid when buying and selling a house. So the last 2 episodes we talked about basically from the negotiating phase, which is the first phase, all the way up to the closing, which is the second phase.
Right.
And now we have the house, and what do we do with it? We own the house. So I brought Augie back on. And today we're going to be talking about the top 5 mistakes to avoid, or some things to consider
to avoid mistakes.
Yeah, to avoid mistakes when renovating a house. So what's number 1?
Well, actually, before we get to number 1, why do you want to avoid these mistakes? For an investor, time is our biggest enemy. Okay, because every day we hold a house, it's costing us. We're paying taxes, we're paying for insurance. If we have borrowed money, we're paying interest. So we really want to think about the acquisition of a house as sort of a race.
Right.
Okay? You don't want to race into the deal, but once you've got it, once you are on title, either you or your trustee, whatever, however you've taken title, you really now need to manage the clock very effectively. So we always want to do some things in advance. So step 1 really is before closing, you should have all of your estimates nailed and your contractors lined up. Okay? And how do we do this? Well, we tend to do it during our inspection period many times.
Right.
Right? So we kind of pre-think out the situation. When I get my inspection, okay, I know now what's wrong with the property, but when I make my buying offer, I should also have some estimates so I know I've budgeted well for my repairs. So if I can schedule my time effectively and that of my contractors, now I can not only have my estimates, I can have a schedule squared away.
Yeah.
So I want to start with my estimates. That's number 1.
And what we've been doing too has been very helpful is actually printing out a copy of the inspection report and leaving it at our renovation. So whenever a contractor shows up, we can say, hey, go into the kitchen, the inspection report is there, this is what we need fixed, and he can give us an estimate. We don't always necessarily have to meet them.
Yeah, that's great, especially when you've got more than one estimate coming in. Everybody's got basically the same scope of work starting out. And, you know, number 2 is the day after closing, unless I'm closing in the morning, then I want it the day of the closing, I want the dumpster in the driveway. I want to get, you know, the demolition work done ASAP. Because until the demolition is done, and that's going to be done by who? Not a GC. That's going to be done by guys that you pay $10 or $12 an hour. Okay, you don't need.
Don't do it yourself.
Oh God, do not do it yourself unless you're happy to make $10 an hour. Then you can.
Or you want a good workout.
Do our work. You know, we'll gladly give you $10 to, you know, tear out a house.
Right.
But you should be able to have, you know, 1 or 2 guys that can do all of your demolition, get everything tossed in the dumpster, so that the more expensive guys, the plumbers, the electricians, the carpenters, they come in with a clean pallet. Okay, they're not climbing over piles of junk or debris. They can go in, they can do their work effectively.
Now, one thing to mention with demo day is if you want things salvaged in the house, make sure that's known before they demo, because it's been known once or twice in my world to have gotten very angry with a contractor because he threw something out on me, but I didn't tell him I wanted it.
Right. And I'd rather than throw it out. In all honesty, I mean, yeah, granted, there's sometimes stuff that's left behind that we want and we can use for another purpose. But at the end of the day, the dollar signs are clicking by.
Right.
Every day, our profit goes down that we hold that property. So we want to make sure we get started ASAP. That's really, dumpster really talks about the timing of getting your work started.
Dumpster 101, order right away.
The third thing, Carrie, is really, you know, we need to have our contractors lined up. Which means you should have a contract signed. So what documents do you need? What documents do you need to see? When we work with a GC, we want to make sure that they've got workers' comp or that they've got exemptions for their subs. Okay, because remember, the GC is the guy that's going to protect us. Now, if you don't have a GC, then if you got an electrician coming in, a plumber, you should be using licensed help. Doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily have to charge you a lot more. They can do permitted work, they can do unpermitted work, but they're the guys that have the liability coverage and the workers' comp in case somebody gets hurt on the job. Also, that liability is really important in the event that something that they did causes a problem sometime in the future. You don't want the buyer or the tenant coming back to you. You really want them to be, you know, you want to be covered by the sub. So you want to get named on their workers' comp policy as well. So you should be able to talk to their insurance broker. Which leads us into number 4, the place where investors tend to make a big mistake, is they tell the contractor what they want done, but they never provide what's called a scope of work. Now, a scope of work is a very detailed list, and we actually create scopes of work for the different phases of the job. So there's a scope of work for the landscaper. Are you getting sod? Are you getting shrubs? How many shrubs? How many square feet of sod? Is it going to be installed, or are they going to drop a pallet off in your driveway? How's that going to work out? So the scope of work, we're going to have one for the electrician, one for the plumber, one for the carpenter. Now the GC, if you have one on the job, they should be coordinating all these people, because what you want to do is compress the time. So what is the order of the job? Great, we've got our rip out. Next thing I want to do is, if anything has to be done inside the walls, such as wiring or plumbing, before the sheetrock goes up, I want to get all that work done while the sheetrock is down. Okay? I want to get my flooring done after the paint.
Right.
Nothing worse than getting paint on brand new tile or in the grout. So when do the cabinets get laid? Typically after the tile goes in. But if you're not replacing, are you going to lay tile around the cabinets? So these are decisions that need to be made prior to closing, so that you've really got a roadmap and a timeline. The timeline is the most important thing. And one of the things that we tend to do, somewhere in our contract, is we want to bonus contractors that get their work done early and on or below budget.
Yeah.
But also,
really
if they run over budget or they run over time, they're now costing me money. I want to have a stick out there that I can kind of penalize them, maybe $100 a day, because that's affecting my carrying cost. Okay? So our scopes of work need to be very detailed. Now that doesn't mean you can't change a scope of work, but understand that should require something called a change order. It's a written request to the contractor to add something to the project. Understand, that's going to change your costs. Okay? Every time they have to make a change,
it's not free.
It's not free. That's the word I was looking for. Not free. That's the words I was looking for. So there will be a cost to those change orders, but that's okay. Sometimes they're required.
Pretty much every project we do, there's always a change order, because there's just something that we forgot to add, or there's something that I want changed, or we don't realize.
Or they open a wall, and there's something that nobody could have anticipated.
Right.
So that stuff can come up, which is why in your budgeting process, you should always have a little bit of a cushion, usually 5%, in the event that there's a surprise. It'll help you, cover that extra expense. And in the event that the expense doesn't come up, that just gives you a little extra profit. And then finally, number 5, where a lot of mistakes get made, is that there's no marketing plan, per se, for when the house is done. So now it takes you a week to get it on the MLS, or a week to start putting out signs and trying to get it sold. One of the things that we like to do is we provide a clipboard and just a sheet on the clipboard with a pen that stays by the front door, and that's our VIP buyers list. We instruct our contractors that if anybody comes up and wants to see what's going on with the house, they're not allowed in for insurance reasons, but we will notify them as soon as the house is ready, and we'll give them a preview before the house is listed for the public. So that gives us VIP buyers that we can talk to in advance to find out if they're serious, if they're qualified to buy, and if they've got enough money and they want to put it under contract before the work is done, they can even pick their own paint colors. They can even pick their own carpeting. But we limit it to those 2 things, because if the deal doesn't close, we want to make sure that we didn't have somebody that wanted to paint the rooms, red and black, and have a great time, having to repaint the place. So pre-marketing and being prepared is really important. The VIP buyers list can go a long way. Another thing that you can do that's really pretty inexpensive with this pre-marketing is to send out a postcard to everyone in the neighborhood.
Yeah, pick your neighbor.
Yep.
Pick your neighbor campaign.
And, while we don't pay a commission unless they're a licensed person, what can you do? You can say, hey, if you have a family member or a friend that's interested in this neighborhood, we might be able to help them offset some of their closing costs simply because you referred them. Okay? And then that comes down to negotiation. Sometimes we cover some costs, and sometimes we don't even have to, because we just work out the offer process. And that way, if you can get a property pre-sold, all the better. Now remember, if you've got an FHA buyer, in today's world, takes 91 days before you can sign a contract with an FHA buyer.
Right.
So if you get your renovations done in less than 90 days, in many cases you will, when you start to market that property, say conventional or cash buyers only. Don't waste your time waiting for people that have FHA. It's just, 30 more days, and if it's conventional or cash, the earnest money can be made non-refundable as soon as their inspection period expires. FHA can't do that. So it's important that you kind of think about in advance.
This is pre-marketing.
Right,
basically
pre-marketing.
Pre-marketing.
So who are the best buyers? How do you want to write your listing agreement? What things do you want to focus on? Also, while you're rehabbing, it always makes sense to put a "We Buy Houses" sign right on the front lawn.
We always put our Carrie Buys Houses signs out in there because, one, you don't know what buyers are going to call you.
Yeah, and if you want to, rather, instead of doing the "We Buy Houses" sign, Carrie will send you a sign.
I'll send you a sign. You can put my sign in there. But also, we've gotten calls from neighbors that said, hey,
Sure.
we saw that you bought this house and we have a house that we want to sell.
Yeah,
so
did
you
you
might
do
get
that
more leads.
when you lived in Georgia? You actually did that with a house, right? You were rehabbing one, and the neighbor down the street said, hey, I'm looking to get rid of mine.
Yeah, she actually saw one of my signs. So, and my husband thought they were so ugly and wanted them gone.
Oh, that was your car magnets. That's
was my
right.
car
Now,
magnet.
oh, yeah, I remember that
But
story.
now he loves my car magnets.
Yeah. An ugly car magnet that made,
I don't care.
30
They're
or
ugly.
40,000 bucks.
Yeah, if they get attention, who cares?
That's the purpose. That's why we market. It doesn't have to be pretty, just productive.
Well, I think they're pretty. But...
Okay. Well, to get to your paycheck sooner, 5 things. Make sure you have your estimates before closing. Make sure you've got your dumpster ordered and ready for delivery the day after closing. Make sure you've worked things out with your contractors in advance. Don't start shopping for contractors the day after you close. That could add 30 days of non-productive time. Are you going to need permits? What's going to be necessary? Make sure you have a good understanding so that you can nail a good timeline. I'm not saying that you need to rush, but you want to have a predictable outcome, and the best way to do that is by getting things done in advance.
And line up all the paperwork that you need from them before you start, because W-9s, you don't want to, tax time comes, you don't want to be going and looking for a W-9 on a contractor you've already paid.
That's true.
'Cause that's hard to nail down sometimes.
Yeah, like impossible. And so your scope of work, make sure you're specific. That should tie right back to your inspection report, okay? And then don't forget that pre-marketing, thinking about that. Next time we're going to be talking about
more
getting
more
it
detail.
sold in a lot more detail.
Yeah,
what has to happen
next phase
after
is
this.
basically selling it,
Right.
getting it under contract to sell. So we're going to be talking a lot about how to best effectively market that property to get the most qualified buyer and quickly.
Right. I'm going to throw in a bonus number 6.
Ooh, bonus.
Throughout the process, communicate. Whether it's by text, whether it's by voice call, you need to talk to your contractor and get regular updates so that you don't get surprised.
Yeah.
Okay? If there's going to be a delay, is there something that could be done to pick up time somewhere else in the project? That's really important. The other thing, too, is at the end, you're going to have a punch list. And that punch list is the last little details that people missed.
Little scratches on the walls, little repairs, dings. You never pay your contractor in full until you get the punch list. Usually we take about 10% left to him until we're done with our punch list items.
Yep, and this way, if you have to get somebody else to cover your punch list, you've got money left over in your budget to pay somebody else.
Right, because you really start punching yourself if you...
Yeah. That would be true.
Bad joke.
But it's better than losing the money. So,
yes.
Okay, so anyway, today you got 5 plus a bonus.
So next week we're going to be talking more in detail about getting that house under contract and the top 5 mistakes to avoid during that phase, and maybe we'll throw in some bonuses there too.
You never know.
But again, this is all about building your team. This is just the next phase in that buying to selling phase. And again, we're going to be having a event coming up called the Investor Bash, and it's all about building your team.
Yep.
So where can they find that
Teamwork
information?
makes the dream work is our theme. And you can learn more at InvestorSummerBash.com. We're down to probably the last 5 or 10 seats. So if this is something that you want to really get involved in and learn more about, I strongly encourage you to check out this event. It's going to be awesome. It's great regardless of your experience level. You could be brand spanking new, or you could be doing your 50th transaction. But the Summer Bash is a great 2-day event. It's happening next weekend, which is the 26th and 27th, and we're actually starting the evening of the 25th with a gala, a little cocktail party, so everybody can kind of get pre-acquainted. Doing things in advance always makes sense.
Yep. So great, and of course, this is all going to be up on my blog at Carrie's Corner at Carrie Buys Houses. And if you or anyone you know is interested in selling a house, you can contact me there, Carrie Buys Houses. And where can they find you, Augie?
You can find me at creatingwealthusa.com, and you can sign up for our free newsletter, which is the Intellectual Capital Report, and even download a copy of one of my books. It's a digital copy of the Financial Freedom Formula.
Okay, thanks guys, and we'll talk to you next week on the next phase.
See you soon.
Bye.